This is an instrument cluster for the 96 Ranger that I'm working on. One of the issues this cluster has is the speedometer does not function. Now, I know the speed sensor is working. I have verified that through the scanner, driving, and this was working, but not accurately. Okay, at some point, this is a few months back, it was not working accurately. It was about 20 miles per hour off. And then also the odometer was not working. So I knew that these have issues with the worm gear that actuates the numbers on the odometer. This is the original one he had in there. Okay. It would stay like this once it was idle or whatever. And again, 20 miles per hour off. One of the things I did do was check the motor, and I verified that it did work. The needle is also clocked right, as it would jump to 70 miles per hour when powered with 1.7 volts. Now, in this location here, this is where the stepper motor, this is where the worm gear goes. This is one like that. Okay, and if you can see well enough that it's all cracked, and what would happen that the shaft would spin, but this was doing nothing. And if you can see, it just crumbles apart, and it actually was not interlocked with the gears on the speedometer. You have little pieces in here. It's just a common occurrence after time. Okay. So, I go ahead, I put it back together, and now, or at that time, the speedometer wouldn't work at all. So, I verified my sensors at the time, the power up to the cluster. I could not check the pins while being plugged in and moving because the way it's set up. And time constraints. He would not allow me to go ahead and finish what I wanted to do because he didn't think it was important. But now that the truck is down, guess what? I'm fixing it. I even went to the yard and I picked up a complete other cluster and I threw it in there just for the heck of it. And it did not work. So, or I believe I transferred, the guts. Maybe not this board in the back here. Let me get these screws out of here. See what I mean? Okay. This circuit board here. Now if you look closely, there are these tabs. Okay, that the connector will slide and just touch up against. That's the old school style. Now, these are all brassy, coppery looking. And if you look at his, which I actually folded out right here, some of those tabs are actually discolored, which means usually corrosion, oxidation, not making good connections. Now this guy right here, this trace, that is the speedometer sender. And let me see, right here are the speedometer connections. We have the sender, I think battery and ground, and they verify to be okay. But the sender, I was having intermittent connections with the test lead. So, now that I have this out, my plan was to go ahead and transfer the circuit board over. I know I went through all these bulbs. All the bulbs are good now, as I took everything from the face and I just pulled them out. Sometimes the issue is you start clocking these off and the little legs break off, and then you're no longer making a good contact. So, I'm weighing out my options here. The other thing I found that even on the main pads, they are discolored. In the upper corner, this right here, there's a little mini board that actually sets in here. This is for the fuel sending unit. I believe it keeps the needle from jumping around too much when the gasoline is sloshing around in the tank. It just keeps it a more stable reading on the dash. And one of the things I did find is that this capacitor here, the solder joint is cracked and not making a very good connection. I'll move the capacitor here. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to go ahead and just reflow, and that should be okay. I know that this thing works on this side. When I was diagnosing the non-functioning fuel level on the cluster, I was able to jump these sender wires one way and the other and have full or empty tank. So I know this is working, but I wanted to be sure that this has a good connection after the fact. The donor cluster I'm not sure of, and I'm trying to avoid taking off and putting on as much as possible. I set up my little solder station here on my table. What I'm going to do is go ahead and just reflow this real quick. Turn it on. I have a Weller WES51. It's an adjustable temperature soldering station. This guy right there. Now, I'm no expert, but on all the components I've ever soldered, one of the things you want to do is have a heat that will melt the solder on the board, but just enough that it's quick in and out. You don't want to have it too hot to where it might burn the board or some of the components. Bigger things, bigger gauge wire, you need more heat because the transfer of the heat is more pronounced. So it takes more heat for bigger gauge to melt the solder. I don't know if that's going to come out okay. The other thing you want to do when soldering is tin your tip. Okay, this protects it from corrosion, oxidation, and ruining the tip. Which one was it right here? And I like to wear goggles because I know sometimes it splatters. The solder will jump out, splatter. Right now I have about a 575. Boom. That's bad, yeah. I'm just going to add more. I have some Kestel solder I just reordered. I get my stuff from Newark Element. And I think it's newark.com. And it's pretty much British or international. You can get capacitors and all kinds of electronic components, tools through them. Unfortunately, we have no more Radio Shacks nearby, but still, this is even higher quality stuff than some of the stuff you can find at the Radio Shack. So this is what I'm using. I have a Kester Quick Draw rosin core. It's a lower heat, so you want to heat the pin. Let me see here. You want to heat the pin and also the board at the same time, so it actually draws the solder into it. You know what? Let me zoom. See here. I'll let that dry and just verify. That looks good. And redo this guy. Sorry, my solder went away. Not good enough on this guy. Not hard enough. So you want to keep it from sitting too long. I'm going to raise it up to about 650 degrees Fahrenheit. There we go. You can see it reflow. Okay. Clean you guys up. Oops. I'm going to take this off, and then I like to turn off the iron. And it's still tinned. They're good. Oh, I'm sorry. The other option I have is soldering a wire to the main sender on here. And then once I have it plugged in, force this into the connector, either here or back probe, whatever. Something that I can verify function, and it's still removable in case I have to take the cluster back out in the future. I think I'll go with that instead. I have just a spare wire from old harnesses I've taken out. I like to use different gauges for different things, and I try not to waste when possible. So all I'm going to do is just solder one point directly on the metal contact here, and I can zoom you guys in. Oops. Boom. Zoom you in there. And in this case, I'm going to use some rosin. And it was a bit corroded. And this will help get rid of some of the impurities on there when soldering. That's it. Let's see. I'll turn this back on. Let's see how well it takes first. Let me get you moved here. Okay. Like that. How about that? Is it ready yet? Yes, it's ready. I have to take this off. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to scrape some of this off here. Hopefully get some nice clean metal. Or clean enough. Like the flux we want to attach the solder to. I'm going to scrape this off. See if I get a nice shiny area to work with here. And then I'm going to try doing this flux again. Rosin. Probably had this stuff like 30 years. We only need a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Goggles. And what is it? 65. Let's go to 700. And in this case, I'm using a chisel point. Okay, I don't know what happened, but the camera shut off. I don't know if it got too hot or what, but just weird. So I changed the battery, and hopefully it'll solve the issue here and not cut off for me. I already soldered this on, nice and tight. This will come off. But I just want to do a better job to get solder, protect the wire from being corroded and such. Back there. So I have a little stand. Let me see here. A little stand here to help hold everything in place. Okay. Now I turn the iron back on, and hopefully this will stay put. We'll see. I'm waiting for the iron to tell me it's up to temp. Okay. So I'll touch the base. And wire. Goodness gracious. There we go. Good stuff. And I forgot to put my bottles on. Alright. This stuff seems to splatter less than store-bought. And you can close tab on that. Nice little toe test. That's not going anywhere. I'm yanking on that. Okay. Just want to make sure that the pads are still touching. Two sides, and what I'll do is wipe everything down with isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Sometimes if you leave flux on there, it will corrode, continue to eat, and I just want to prevent anything else. We'll see. I'm getting off this pad anyway with the alcohol, just to see if it improves. And let me try this guy. And I went back on the footage when I was reviewing to see how far back it turned off. I just want to re-demonstrate this guy. These are the 2 points that I redid. Okay, I've got the alcohol. And a couple sheets of paper towel. One should suffice. And we're going to wipe down this box off. The other thing you could do to protect the board or anything out in the open that's not enameled is just use a nail polish. Clear nail polish. Nail polish is good. Okay. And then these pads. I believe you can use acetone to clean as well. I'm just not, because I just did my nails. And that does not look like it's going to get any better. curious to see if that little pad will actually take any solder. And the worst case scenario, I have this bypass anyway. And I'm going to lower the temperature on this now back to about 50. Or 500, I'm sorry. Let's see, can I tip this up so I can see better? Get this down. How about that? Buttons and put it there. I'm curious. Seems to have cleaned it up. I know it's peeling up from the plastic, and that's okay. I'll be sure to bend it back, and that way it stays put. That should be good, yeah. In fact, I can hold it down while soldering, and then the solder will help keep it straight. Let's see. That's quick. All I gotta do is just tap. Nice. Okay. Let's peel this up. Is it stuck on there? Yes. Alright, now we're just going to pick this up. I didn't do it here at the bend. So it should fall back under. Yes. And maybe having that solder on top will help make a better connection with the connector, with the harness. We'll see. And as a backup, I have this. Bam. Alright. Time to pack up and see you at the shop. I soldered the points on here, and then I just installed this. I have all the connectors plugged in. I have this jumper wire here, not for power, but this is the sensor sensor signal from the, oh goodness, the vehicle speed sensor. Sorry, it's been a long day. So this comes directly from the vehicle speed sensor, and I was going to go ahead and back probe the main connector just to be sure that we had a good connection. This is soldered to the circuit board, and then I'll just back probe this end to the back of the connector. Not a big deal. But it looks like I won't have to do it. I just turned on the vehicle, and the speedometer does work. Now, mind you, the brakes aren't intact yet, so I could put it in gear, but then I have to shut off the vehicle to have it stop. I don't want to put it back into park with the wheels still spinning, obviously. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to turn it on. Okay. Put some brake. Drive. Now I'll let go. See, we definitely have speedometer function. We just don't have brakes yet. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put tape on the end of this. I wanted to have this as a backup, and I can just tuck it in there for now. And I will tag this with the vehicle speed to cluster signal, and then we'll just put all the other how do you say, the trim panels and everything back on here. Okay, so here we are in a 96 Ranger. This is after TST. I wanted to get some footage of using the scan tool to verify the speed sensor and the speedometer that I fixed, that I repaired. So I'm hooking up the scanner. I'm going to hook it up to the PCM and read data stream. And all I want is vehicle speed sensor, so it's probably going to be towards the bottom. Vehicle speed. And that's it. I'm going to turn this on. Right now it's saying about 64 degrees, which is about right. It's cool here in the garage. And vehicle speed at 0. I'm going to turn it on. Yuck. Ugly belt squeal. Everything's still lifted up. Everything's off the ground still, right? Okay. Alright. So we put it in drive. And I know the back brakes don't work, so when we do start to move, here we go. 5 miles. Corresponds. We're going to go to 10 miles an hour. And that's about 10, 15. So in fact it is accurate. I just know I don't have any brakes in the back, so I'll have to shut it off. Alright.